This is the Orioles Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Baltimore Orioles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good evening, Birdland, and welcome to the Baltimore Orioles Postcast. My name is Luke Slaybaugh, and as always, I am here as your post-game host after every game, right after the final out, instant analysis and reaction. We got a lot to cover today. The O's played 2 games, and they're coming off on a high note, a 2-1 win over the Boston Red Sox. 2-1 the final, and I appreciate you tuning in here on this Memorial Day weekend. I hope you're happy. I hope you're safe. I hope you are doing well as we recognize the service and sacrifice of so many who have come before us and so many who will come after us. West Point had their commencement just today. And of course, being out in the DMV, you know, the Naval Academy is just a hop, skip, and a jump away. They put their lives on the line. They dedicate their lives to defending and serving our country and being the best possible humans they can at all times. There's such great values in this area, and we honor our military wherever they're serving today across the globe. Thank you for listening, watching live here on YouTube or on the replay. Let me know where you're tuning in from and your pick for player of the game, because that's coming up right as we're talking about the 2-1 win over the Boston Red Sox.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Left-hander Trevor Rogers gets the nod as the 27th man in Game 2 of this doubleheader. As a reminder, the formatting looks a little bit different today. First block of this show, we'll talk about Game 2. Second block, we'll talk about the loss in Game 1, 6-5 in extra innings to the Boston Red Sox. Back to the 27-year-old Rogers. What I saw today was a great pitch maker. Not good, exceptionally better than good. And he looked exactly like what GM Mike Elias and the Baltimore Orioles brass wanted in exchange for Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby at last year's trade deadline. And yes, Rogers had a poor 5-start showing after the deadline a season ago. Pitched to a 7.11 ERA, which was depressing given the good 2-month stretch he had in a Marlins uniform leading up to the end of July. However, the Orioles brass saw someone that they could help return to his 2021 All-Star and Rookie of the Year runner-up form. There's a good pedigree for Rogers. It was a first-round pick out of high school in New Mexico by the Marlins in 2017. And this was the tune he pitched to. Nothing going in the first. Leadoff single given up to Christian Campbell in the second inning, and then retires 16 batters in a row. And it ended on a cheap hit by pitch in the bottom of the 7th, hitting Rob Refsnyder on the toes. No walks today as he dipped just barely into the 3rd time through the Red Sox lineup. Fastball was playing up. We saw a lot more velocity out of Trevor Rogers. In terms of the ground ball outs and flyouts, let's take a look at how Trevor Rogers did. 6 ground outs compared to 5 flyouts. Extraordinary stuff. Gotta love what you saw out of the left-hander. 27 years old. There's so much to dream on. This guy is going into his prime years. Ideally, with the amount of control you would have on him and the ability to perhaps extend him reasonably and have him be a cog in this rotation, this was exactly the type of outing that the Orioles needed. And I would say maybe the most impressive or maybe most surprising outing I've seen this year. Maybe not the best outing, not the best one I've seen this year, but definitely the most welcome. We've seen Tomoyuki Sagano pitch into the 8th inning, and he's really been carrying the O's rotation on his back. Trevor Rogers gave something a little bit different. Fastball played up. Slider was looking really good. Was just cooking Marcelo Meyer, number 6 overall prospect in baseball. Called up in between games to replace Alex Bregman, who's going to be on the IL for a while with a significant lower body injury. But I'll tell you, There was no risk for Alex Bregman getting Wally pipped today. Rogers schooled Meyer. Bottom of the second, working from 3-0 to 3-2, and then striking him out. Extraordinary. Bottom of the fourth, striking out Christian Campbell, looking at the knees. Fastball running 95. Striking out Meyer, bottom of the fifth, swinging slider down at the shins. Extraordinary outing by Trevor Rogers. Final line, 6 1/3, no earned runs, 2 hits, 5 strikeouts, no walks. 87 pitches, 56 of those strikes. Mr. Rogers took him to school. Ran into a little bit of trouble there in the seventh. Andrew Kittredge was in, got a ground out by Wilyer Abreu, and then struck out Myers on a slider low to end the inning. Meyer, excuse me. Good to see Andrew Kittredge, the right-hander, with great break in his stuff, his slider. I would say the turning point, this game in particular, comes down to what the O's did with runners in scoring position. Let's talk about it.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Scoreless game going into the top of the eighth. This was a pitcher's duel, particularly with right-hander Lucas Giolito, the former All-Star with the White Sox, on the bump for the Red Sox. Really great and efficient outing by him as well. Running up close to 100 pitches, but getting through 7 scoreless. Really good baseball in the nightcap. Left-hander Brennan Bernardino is in for Giolito. He got 1 out. Maverick Handley goes from 0-2 to 3-2, working the plate. He walks. Gunnar Henderson grounds out into a fielder's choice, takes first base. And then with 2 outs, man, love what the O's did. Alex Cora comes to the mound for Boston, puts in right-hander Luis Guerrero. Adley Rutschman works a walk. And then Ryan O'Hearn, batting .270 with runners in scoring position up to this point. Works at 2-2. Yanks a changeup outside into right field. Gunnar, with his speed, is able to score standing. Makes it 1-0. And a great insurance hit by Dylan Carlson in the top half of the ninth. Jorge Mateo, who had a pretty decent game, walked ahead of Carlson, stole second base for his 100th career stolen bag. And then Carlson going oppo, poking a double into the left field corner. A desperately needed insurance run made it 2-0. And of course, there's some dramatics. As any Cubs fan in October 2003 will tell you, the final 6 outs are going to be the hardest. We'll talk about the ninth. Actually, excuse me, we'll talk about the eighth first. Andrew Kittredge getting the bump with the lead. Gives up a single to Nick Sogard. David Hamilton, the speedster, into pinch run. Runs on the first pitch and steals second base. Connor Wong then walks. Kittredge able to get out 0-2 on Ceddanne Rafaela. Then on a low slider, gets him to pop out to Dylan Carlson in right field. Enters Sir Anthony Dominguez, whose ERA to this point had ballooned over 6. Far past his career line. Strikes out Jarren Duran on a splitter in the dirt. Then the next pitch gets Rafael Devers to pop out into foul territory to Ryan O'Hearn. And what's underrated about this inning is that Drew French visited the mound between Duran and Devers. He had already visited Kittredge earlier in the inning, but with Rogers being so efficient through 6 1/3 and not running into any trouble on the Bates paths, no traffic, they didn't have to go to the mound. Whereas when you've seen like a Cade Povich or a Dean Kramer or Charlie Morton have something mechanically off and start putting people on base, you've got to burn a couple of those 4 mound visits pretty early on. But the O's were working with all of them. So you should absolutely talk strategy in these high leverage moments. And in fact, the gripe I've had for most of this year is that when things do start to go final destination, as we mentioned yesterday, the chain reaction starts with a runner on or a missed catch or an error. That is the time to regroup and go over strategy, if you got it. Great to have Drew French in the mound on the mound between Duran and Devers just to talk it over, to just bring in the powwow, get the infield in. When you got 4 mound visits to burn, you got to. Abraham Toro put a little scare into Birdland in the top of the ninth, hits a home run to center field, which could have been the catch of the year by Jorge Mateo. Mateo barrels over that hard center field wall. The ball pops in and out of his glove. And Jorge is shaken up, of course, but stays in the game. And the fans at Fenway give him a little bit of an ovation. Christian Campbell grounds out. Wheeler Abreu then singles. And then Meyer grounds out to a fielder's choice gunner tagging second base for 2 outs. And then David Hamilton pokes the line drive to center field. And who else but Jorge Mateo making the sliding grab to end the game. 2-1 the final. 5 outs recorded by Sir Anthony Dominguez are his most since July 4th of last year. Also on this day in 1994, Cal Ripken Jr. hitting his 300th career home run, joining Eddie Murray and Boog Powell. Something extraordinary. It's good to end a doubleheader on a positive note. Coming up, we got a nitpick and we got a gripe. We've got to talk about game 1, which in many stages was probably more within reach and more winnable for the O's than this pitcher's duel that we just watched. So stick with us. We're going to talk about what went wrong for Zach Eflin, some of the more questionable decisions by interim manager Tony Mansolino, and a boatload of roster moves, a cluster today, particularly in between games, as we welcome some newcomers with some interesting backstories on this Baltimore Orioles active roster. If you notice my cadence is off, I think my nose is about to bleed. If you're watching on the YouTube, I feel it coming. And if that does happen, I am going to go off camera. We'll finish the show, but I'm not going to bleed over the microphone. So thanks for sticking with us here on the Saturday night. I hope you're safe. I hope you're doing well here on this Memorial Day weekend, spending time with family, enjoying something that is special to you. If it's Orioles baseball, if it's just clowning around on YouTube, I've certainly been there. I've certainly had the feed the algorithm play to me this weekend. But this show, the Locked On Podcast Network, is brought to you by FanDuel. Thunder and Wolves are going on right now. SGA, the newly minted MVP, something of a free throw merchant, as they are saying. But this might be the time for Minnesota to bounce back. And if you've got an eye for this, game-winning shots, breakout players, same-game parlays, this is a great time to get in on FanDuel. I know I'm certainly keeping an eye on those prop bets and the odds as the game goes on. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. Player props, performance trends, same-game parlays all contribute to the ways that fans can just get in on the action, play smart, and win big. So yeah, SGA, Jalen Williams leading the charge for OKC. Certainly worth putting money on if you asked me. And then those Pacers somehow have the clutch gene in the Eastern Conference. Something to behold. As someone who has followed both of those teams at different stages of my career, it's good to see the young guys continue to shine. If you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. We carry on. I do get really aggressive nosebleeds. And yeah, such is life. Why don't we talk about game 1 of this doubleheader? Right-hander Zach Eflin going up against Boston's right-hander Hunter Dobbins, a 6-5 loss in 10 innings. A game that, like many others for the Orioles this year, fell in the worst possible circumstances. I'm just going to be completely honest. When this team scores 5 runs, it should have a decent chance at winning. And to be even more frank, if this team is to string wins together in 2025, the expectations, the bar is the floor right now. This team has buried itself in quite a hole. That's the reality of this. If they are going to string 2 or 3 wins together, knock on wood, the bats should be the salvation. In the last week, they have been hitting well, over 300 with runners in scoring position. We saw a good turnaround in the Brewers series and the series prior to that, and they started out riding that trend. A great top of the first. 1 out, runners on the corners. Ramon Urias hits a slider into the left center field gap. Adley Rutschman is in. Gunnar Henderson scores from first. It's 2-0. And even still in the fifth, there was a crooked number, a 3-run rally. Heston Kjerstad leads off with a double to left field going oppo. Emmanuel Rivera, nice piece of hitting to the opposite field to right. With Kjerstad's speed, they go station to station. So runners at the corners. Left-hander Sean Newcomb in. If you remember, he started a game against the Orioles early on in April. He was shortly DFA'd after this game. Jackson Holliday avoids double play, taps the ball to second, a fielder's choice. Kjerstad scores, making it 3-2. Adley walks. Then Gunnar hits a double off the left center field wall. Holliday scores to make it 4-2. With 2 outs, Ryan O'Hearn gets hit by a pitch. With Ryan Mountcastle up, wild pitch by Newcomb, you will take him any way you can. Adley scores, it's a 5-2 ball game, a nice little 3-run rally. And as we mentioned, the final destination gene of this club, you know, there's 1 out in this inning, excuse me, because you got Jackson Holliday there. He gets caught running to third early. Pitcher steps off the mound. And to be quite honest, you know, Ryan Mountcastle's had a hard time looking at the ball or seeing the ball out of the hand this year. He's been just, oh, excuse me. Excuse me. I'm mixing up 2 different situations here. My mistake. Not Jackson Holliday. Ryan Mountcastle pops out to end that inning. I knew something was wrong. I was thinking back to the Brian Bayo stepping off the mound the other night. You know how this all just kind of clusters together? There's that. Yeah, pops out to Toro at first base. He was just baffled by the low breaking stuff. Can't really see it out of the hand. They needed to pour on there. Could have finished it, could have stepped on their throats there. And I felt for right-hander Zach Eflin today. This is second consecutive shaky outing. Starts with a 30-minute rain delay, so there's already bad auspices here. Starting a game is very difficult. Just getting into that rhythm, if something's off, you've got to correct it, or else you're putting your whole team behind the 8 ball. So he's given a 2-0 lead, taking the mound, and just a deluge starts coming down right as he takes the mound. Boston's been dealing with the remnants of a nor'easter. We've had, multiple games already postponed in this series. And Eflin, who had trouble with the long ball against Nationals right after manager Brandon Hyde was fired, gets taken yard on the second pitch of the game by Jaron Duran. So already that lead is cut in half, 2-1. Then there's an 8-minute rain delay. I mean, they just put the emergency drying material there on the infield surface to try to counter the effects of this rain that's just popping up that probably was missed on radar. Same inning, he gives up a solo shot to Wilyer Abreu. Stuff wasn't necessarily playing, didn't have a strikeout until the bottom of the 4th, then gave up another solo shot in the bottom of the 5th to Abraham Toro to make it a 5-3 game. Again, both times the Orioles broke out for crooked numbers, they could not string together a shutdown inning. That's been the knock on this team since Jump Street. Bottom 6, Eflin's final inning gives up a ground rule double to Devers, walks Wilyer Abreu. And then kind of a boneheaded play by Gunnar Henderson. Carlos Narvaez hits a slow tapper to Gunnar Henderson. It's a tough play at second base, and with all of Gunnar's momentum going towards first and no outs, you just need to get 1. Because if you can get out of that inning with a 5-4 lead, you can regroup and then strategize your bullpen accordingly. And Gunnar I don't want to say hot dogging it, but trying to make a play that probably wasn't there. It was going to be a tough play and a close call at second regardless. And you're in the business of getting outs there when you've got a lead. I don't need to tell that to a team that at the time was 17 games under 500 and now still is, given that they've split this doubleheader. And then Brian Baker, the right-hander, is in to replace Eflin. He allows an RBI ground out by Nick Sogard, and that ties up the ball game. So the final line on Eflin, I'll pull up the box score here. He ends up going 5+. 5 runs, 4 those earned, given that error. 2 walks and a strikeout, 3 home runs. Eflin's ERA has now ballooned to 5.40. And of course, last little bit on this game, we'll talk about extra innings. Know that the Orioles bullpen's been shorthanded for a while now, and they've made a cluster of moves to try to get this team somewhat healthy and effective at the same time. Left-hander Gregory Soto in for the 10th. Ceddanne Rafaela is the ghost runner on second at a 5-5 game. Jaron Duran pops out and then brings up Rafael Devers. I believe 6 for 11 career against Soto, I believe was the number that was put out there. With a ghost runner on second and 1 out, you've got first base open. The game is tied, so that run doesn't really count. And it also opens up the force play to any base when the next batter is up. I believe it was Rob Refsnyder. Rafael Devers in the month of May leads Major League Baseball in average RBI, on base percentage, and OPS. He is not the same player who is coming off that shoulder injury the first time the O's played Boston. Of course, you know what happens. Soto gives up single to Devers. Rafaela comes in and scores and walks it off at 6-5, the final. Hard to justify this in real time. And even interim manager Tony Mansolino had a hard time stringing together a word salad on this. Taking a look at a tweet from Jake Rill. He's the beat reporter for the Orioles for MLB.com. He says of Devers, if you put him on right there, it gets messy. And then you've got to go with Soto against Refsnyder. Rob Refsnyder, notorious for his splits against left-handed pitchers. And again, bullpen's already kind of shorthanded. You've worked Felix Bautista already in this game, Cano, Baker. You're out of options, and you've yet to make roster moves for the second game in this doubleheader. However, doesn't justify pitching against their best hitter. You don't let him beat you. Rob Refsnyder beats up Soto. He'll have to do it in the air. It's just one that kind of slipped away. O's couldn't get a shutdown inning. Zach Eflin continues to look kind of shambly. This wasn't his worst outing. That was last week against the Nats. But man, let's take a look at some of the roster moves that were made today. Ramon Laureano is officially on the injured list with a left ankle sprain. They downplayed, the Orioles did, that injury in real time in Milwaukee because it looked like kind of a freak thing. He was diving on that American Family Field outfield grass, and it appeared that his cleat got caught up, went down to a knee, making a catch that went in and out of his glove. This is a significant loss for the Orioles because Laureano was playing above his profile as a fourth outfielder and putting together some consistent at-bats, maybe the best swing consistently for this team. Was hitting 266 and the OPS was over 850. 6 home runs, which was up there tied with Jackson Holiday among some of the club's leaders. You got Mullins with 10, Gunners got 7, O'Hearn. Laureano was making his case to be part of this and doing it against lefties and righties. So utility infielder / outfielder Terran Vavra is up. You might recall him breaking in with the Orioles a few years ago and was on the opening day roster in 2023. Haven't heard much from him since. This evening, left-hander CNL Perez was designated for assignment. This is a move that Birdland can't agree was long overdue. There was one very good appearance from CNL the past week, the 2 2/3 scoreless outing. However, it did not counteract what was a consistent string of underperformance. 21 2/3 innings for CNL, ERA of 8.31, and the whip, walks and hits per innings pitched, is 2.12. He was clogging up those base paths and not getting it done. And in his place, the O's see fit to call up right-hander Yaramil Geraldo. And if you're asking who, you're not alone. Geraldo is 29 years old out of the Dominican Republic. And he might be one of the low-key bargain bin pickups by general manager Mike Elias that might work. Geraldo has not pitched an organized affiliated ball since 2021 when he was in the Diamondbacks organization. He was last with the High A Hillsboro Hops. He's bounced around different winter leagues and international leagues and independent leagues, even in the United States. Signed in 2018, had strong debuts with the Hops and the Kane County Cougars in the Diamondbacks organization. And this season, he has been slowly ramping up from High A, Aberdeen to Chesapeake Double A to a few outings for the Norfolk Tides. And at 29 years old, has been able to adjust and ramp up. This could completely backfire. This might be a cold take come tomorrow. And it's an interesting, intriguing prospect, so to speak. His first appearance will be his major league debut. But someone who's had an interesting trajectory and interesting arc making it to the major leagues. And it's better to take a chance on him at this point in the season than it probably would have before he got innings under his belt. CNL Perez has been unreliable since the start of the year. And fans on social media and on this channel and in the comment section have been calling for his head since Jump Street. Now is probably the right time to let go and give an opportunity to someone who could have potential. Tomorrow is the series finale. The O's will look to split the 4-game set with the Red Sox. Right-hander Dean Kramer is the probable starter. He's 3-5 with a 5.50 ERA. He's going up against right-hander Walker Buehler. Buehler's 4-1. His ERA is a clean 4.00. Buehler was ejected in his last start for arguing balls and strikes, along with manager Alex Cora. As an aside, I do have a fun story about Walker Buehler that's not really Walker Buehler related, but back when pitchers could hit in 2019, I was working in the clubhouse level of Busch Stadium in St. Louis, and the Dodgers were visiting the Cardinals. Right-hander Michael Wacha on the mound for St. Louis. And Buehler was hitting for himself and actually cranked a home run to deep center field. There might have been runners on, I don't remember. And this is the part that you don't really see as a fan or even as a media member in Major League Baseball. But at the time, I was monitoring the clubhouses to make sure that no one was using live real-time video to signal signs to opposing or signal signs about opposing teams to their own teammates, kind of like what the Astros were accused of doing and other teams in their wake as well. And in between innings, Waka goes down into the clubhouse level, says a couple of words I can't relay here live on the air, and throws his glove the length of the hallway, like down from the bottom steps of the Cardinals dugouts, just all the way across the hallway. I get it, man. Baseball's competitive. Players are competitive. That was a good one. We're coming up on 30 minutes here. I want to say thank you so much for tuning into the Baltimore Orioles postcast. Thanks for putting up with my shenanigans here. And I hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend. We'll be back here tomorrow as we look forward to that Sunday afternoon game. Dean Kramer going up against Walker Buehler. But for now, let's celebrate this nightcap, a 2-1 score. Final, Baltimore on top of Boston. Winning pitcher for the O's. Looks like Andrew Kittredge credited with the win. Solid inning of relief of Trevor Rogers, who goes 6 1/3 scoreless in his season debut for the Baltimore Orioles. Thank you so much for watching here live on YouTube, listening on the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Luke Slaybaugh. This has been the Orioles postcast. So if you're not back here tomorrow or Monday, totally get it. But I hope to see you here. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Good night. Stay safe. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow.